Good morning, guys. Hey, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. This is a live show. Obviously, you guys know it's live. We're going to be talking about the transfer window today because the window has been open for um, 24 hours. And so let's get a lay of the land. Let's talk about who could go, who could come in, and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I am not usually doing shows at this time, so it feels a little bit weird. It's 5 a.m. in LA, so it's 1 p.m. in the UK. So let me know in the chat where you are and what time it is there while I go ahead and send out the tweet because I haven't done it yet. But yeah, I'm sure we have loads to say, loads to talk about. I've stayed off of social media over the last 2 days. I just honestly, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be asked. Like, I really couldn't because, listen, like, how many times can I talk about Arsenal's poor form right now? Like, there's just not much else I can do. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I said everything I needed to say after the Fulham game, and I'm fully ready to move on because there's nothing we could do about West Ham and Fulham now. We just have to look forward to Liverpool. And I'll be doing a preview with Diluted on Friday for that. And yeah, we just have to move on, guys. Like, what can you do? What can you do? Just looking for the tweet now. I know I sent it. I scheduled it. And Happy New Year, guys. How were your festivities? Did you go out? Did you do anything? Like, I told you guys to be safe because I wanted to see you guys back here. So hopefully you guys had a really good holiday season, New Year's and all that kind of stuff. You spent time with the people that you love, and the people that you love are healthy and all those types of things. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Hugo says, Happy New Year, all. Let's see. Chris Fraser says Canada, East Coast, and it is 9 a.m. Andrew says it is 1300. That's 1 p.m. in the UK. The Arsenal Perspective says it is 2 p.m. in France. Tom says, hey, Jess. Hello to you as well. I'm in South Africa, and the time is 3:03. So we got times everywhere, y'all. We got times everywhere. But no matter where you are, it's Arsenal time. So we're going to get into it. And like I told you guys a couple of days ago, from now on, there's going to be 2 streams. There's going to be a stream at this time and one at 9 p.m. UK time. So, and the subjects will be different. So we're not going to repeat these same subjects. So in the afternoon show or the later show, we're actually going to be talking about the injury problems that Arsenal have. There's been some information on Saka and Ben White and things like that. And has the squad been managed from the beginning of the season till now by Mikel Arteta? That's what we're going to talk about then. So we're not going to get like deep in the weeds on the injuries today, right? Like on this show, we're going to talk about actual transfer targets on this show. So let's go ahead and get into it. Where do I begin? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but that's a train. Arsenal need to bring in at least a player in this January transfer window. They just have to. Like, as much as I feel like it's a damning indictment on our summer window that we feel like we need more signings now. I feel that way. I feel like if we had done what we needed to do in the summer, we wouldn't feel so desperate to need signings now. And what I mean is a signing beyond a defender, right? With Timber's injury, I think we knew from the moment that Timber got injured that if somebody else were to get injured long term, we were going to need to go into the January transfer market and bring in another defender. But what we should not be looking at right now is an attacker, in my opinion, and a midfielder, because we had $200 million to spend and we brought in 2 midfielders, and we still feel like we need an attacker and a midfielder. We still feel like we need a lot of things. And so for me, that is a very bad look on our summer window, because not only have we spent this money, but we probably don't feel at this stage that we have enough to do what we need to do, and we don't feel well equipped to do that. We know that the goal this season was to win the title, win a trophy, go further than what we did this season, and we at this point are performing worse this season than we did it last season. So it's not a good look. I remember sitting in streams like after like Forest and Palace and a couple of other games earlier on in the season, and it is like October, and we were already talking about the January transfer window, and that did not feel good. because the summer prior, when we started the season, nope, we were not even talking about the January transfer window until I think like Thomas Partey got injured. And then we were like, okay, what are we going to do to boost ourselves to make sure that we finish strong in the title race? This feels completely different. This feels completely different to me. That it feels like from minute one, it didn't feel like we had done enough or we didn't do the right things, right? And so Arsenal definitely need to bring in players. Um, need to bring in players, but the likelihood of us bringing in more than one feels very unlikely if Arsenal are unwilling to sell. And I've been banging on about this for years that Arsenal just don't have the capacity to know when to sell a player and when to let go, because we have never looked back at players that we've sold for profit and said, "Oh my God, I wish we hadn't sold that person." Like like, when have we done that? Like in the Emirates era, like in these last like 5-6 years, when have we been like, "Oh my God, we sold Iwobi. Oh my God, I'm so devastated. Oh, we sold Willock. Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do without Willock?" Like that does not happen when you sell players that are kind of like, they're not really going to be a part of the plan. You know that they have value and you sell them on for a decent profit. You never really miss those players, especially if you reinvest that money properly. And I just don't think Arsenal do it enough. We think about Ainsley Maitland-Niles, a player that we knew wasn't probably good enough, but we got like a 15 million pound like offer from Wolves, and we decided to keep him until he was worth nothing. And so now that we're in the January transfer window and we have FFP problems, meaning that unless we sell, we cannot bring anybody in. I am very discouraged by some of the like reports out there saying that Arsenal are like unwilling to part with Ramsdale, unwilling to part with Nketiah. Those are the two players that would bring in the biggest fees. And I feel like I should see more emphasis on Reece Nelson and Emile Smith-Rowe, two players that don't get any playing time and are they're wasting their life away. If we feel so desperate to play Saka with an Achilles injury, then Reece Nelson is not good enough, because Saka is our most important player. He's top 3 most important players at Arsenal, right? And if you're willing to risk him, he has been injured for months now. Like, let's be real. But Arteta is not comfortable enough to rotate Saka out for his well-being in our season and use Reece Nelson. So Reece Nelson, as talented as I think he is useless to us right now, because he's not getting the minutes that would allow us to rest our most important players. So you need to sell him. Sell him, and sell Emile Smith-Rowe. Neither one of them are useful to Mikel Arteta because they're always on the bench. And even when we have players that are running around with hip injuries, players that are running around with Achilles injuries, players that are in terrible form, they don't get playing time. They don't get playing time. Emile Smith-Rowe was fit almost the entire, before he got that last injury, he was fit. He wasn't getting any playing time. Reece Nelson, no playing time. Fabio Vieira was kind of in and out. It's kind of like, what are we playing at? What are we playing at? So even if it's like 1-2 players and you can get 40 million off the books, that's better than sitting around and sitting on your hands, because that 40 million can at least be used to bring in one player that can do something when Saka is injured or when Martinelli is out of form, right? And so Reece Nelson is getting some looks in from West Ham, funny enough. So Premier League clubs are showing interest in Reece Nelson, with West Ham being one of them. That was reported by ex-West Ham employee and also reposted by Team News and Ticks. He would be clear profit for us in terms of FFP. What are you waiting on? What are you waiting for? Brighton wanted him in the summer. I get that we needed to renew him so that we could protect his value. This is why you protect his value. If West Ham want him, sell him. Get the 10, 15 million for Reece Nelson, because he's not helping us. And he has high wages too. So it's like, just move him on. I don't understand why you wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense at this stage right now for me to hold on to players like Reece Nelson and Emile Smith-Rowe, who have interest in them and could bring us some money. And we're not going to be able to sell, they don't want to sell Nketiah for some freaking reason. I don't get it, but You have to move somebody on in order to, it sounds desperate right now, but like salvage the season. Like, I just don't think you can go through the season with players that are painfully out of form and players that are playing with injuries for months and not look at some of like these squad positions and say, are they giving us enough? Like, if Mikel Arteta is not willing to use this guy, what can we do in order to like flip that over? Is there a player that we can bring in on a loan, or if can we scrape together 30 million and bring somebody in? Like, what are we doing? Let's see. The Arsenal perspective says Reece Nelson isn't playing enough and he really needs to think about his own career progression. And seeing things from Reece Nelson, like, I want to fight for my position, is like, can you not? Like, but you also have to make it painfully obvious to this player that you don't have a future here. Sometimes you have to be ruthless. The same ruthlessness that was applied to Ramsdale and Aubameyang and players like that, I think need to be applied to players that are sitting around acting like there's a spot to fight for when there's not. We need to move you on. You don't have a place here. We love you, but you need to move on. Reece Nelson and Kedia, these guys are like 24. They're not going to get that much better than what they are now. They're not really helping us, so what are we doing? Move them on. I think sometimes you need to be a little bit more heavy-handed with this and be like, we have these offers on the table for you. Which one? You can get players out of your club. I've seen other teams do it. Move them on. Like, he doesn't have a spot. Like, he really doesn't have a spot in this team, because it's not that he could not have a spot. Like, I think another manager would come in and use Reece Nelson more. There's some reason why Mikel Arteta just does not like him or does not use him. I don't know what that is, but in this era that we're in right now, Arteta doesn't fuck with him like that. He just doesn't. You don't, like, if you like a player and you rate them, you don't just only play them in dead rubber against PSV. You use them in games like, I don't know, fucking Burnley, Sheffield at home. You use them in those games so that you can rest Saka. So when we get into the period that we're in right now, Saka doesn't have a muscle hanging off. He doesn't have Achilles injury, So he doesn't rate him, move him on. Like, be aggressive. Arsenal are very aggressive in decisions that aren't really giving us much, but the decisions that would really help us, like moving Nketiah on and bringing in a really good attacker, they're not ruthless on. And that doesn't make any sense to me. The goalkeeper situation was handled with such ruthlessness that I expect that to be applied across the board. And it's not being applied across the board. When you looked at the most important things that we needed to do in the summer, goalkeeper was probably somewhere like down here. And I do think we needed to look at the goalkeeper situation, but was it top of the list? Hell no. It wasn't. But why isn't that same ruthlessness that was used with Ramsdale not applied to Nketiah? Is it just because Nketiah trains properly? He trains well? What does that mean? Like, I don't get it. So you need to be more ruthless. You need to be more ruthless and say, Reece Nelson, listen, Wolves want you, West Ham wants you. Baby, pick one. You want to stay in London? West Ham is calling. You want to try something new? Go over there. I mean, he would do well at Wolves. He would do well at Wolves. He would do well anywhere where he gets playing time, Reece Nelson. But he's not going to do well sitting on our bench, taking up a useful spot for somebody that maybe Arteta would give a minute or two so that Saka doesn't fall, like he doesn't just fall in the middle of the pitch. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those for me, Let's see. Curve Glass says, come on, Jess, stop the waffle. Are you Arteta out? This is not Arteta out conversation. I don't know what you guys want from me. Like, we're talking about the transfer window here. And I already said on my previous stream that I'm not Arteta out. So, sorry to break it to you. We're talking about the transfer window right now. Skills says Neto, Onana, Toney in January. We're not going to get all that. If we're lucky, we'll get a defender. Like, that's how bad our summer window actually ended up being. It was so bad that we attributed so much resources and we're not getting enough out of those resources, but us spending so much gives us no wiggle room in January, and the club is too hard-headed to sell players that don't help us. That's where we are. So one player would be great if we could bring one in. I would even say, like, I don't know, like, here's my other like gripe with this is that when you look at what we truly need, right? Like, what we're desperate for right now, we have, we'll talk about Tomiyasu in a second, but we have probably a defender issue. We have Ben White that's dealing with some issues. You have Tomiyasu who's been out for a significant amount of time. Timber's out, Zinchenko's out. So you need a defender. But, there was a moment where we had a couple of opportunities, two in particular, against Lawns and a dead rubber, against Lawns and then a dead rubber a couple of weeks after that, where we could have seen if we could have used a Rule Walters or a Lino Sousa or something just to fill in so that we could attribute whatever funds we get for this window to an attacker or to a midfielder. But we did not use that time. We used that time to play Declan Rice as center back. We used that time to give more minutes to Saliba, who doesn't need them. We used that time to give Cedric minutes, who doesn't even have a future here, should have been gone for years ago. So I just don't really understand what we were thinking. You know, you knew that this defender crisis was coming, and we haven't even seen us even try to maybe look at the academy. And I'm not like one of these people that's like, I need to see 5 or 6 Haalanders in this team. I'm willing to sell these guys if they're meant to serve the first team in several different ways. Whether they make a fee for us, like we have them in the squad and we sell them on, or they do like Saka and they're big parts of the team, or they fill in squad positions, right? And so we didn't even use that opportunity to see if we could have used Rule Walters or Lino Sousa. And I know that they're kids, but sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And right now, even though I feel like we need a defender, I am very worried that if we don't bring in an attacker or if we don't bring in another midfielder, we're fucked. Because Thomas Partey doesn't look any closer to coming back. You know, Emile Smith-Rowe is not trusted. Fabio Vieira is out in the woods. Kiwior, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, all these, like, we need more than one signing, but we're only probably going to get one, right? And I don't think bringing Tierney off of loan makes any sense either, because if you think Kiwior looks bad playing in a position that doesn't suit him, watch Kieran Tierney come back from Spain and try to invert and see how you like it right before he gets injured again. So, like, for me, it's weird to me that, like, we're at this place, but it's weird to me that there doesn't seem to be a level of aggression around moving on players that are not being utilized anyway and are just being hoarded for no reason in order to get us at least one player. And we're also not using all of our resources. And one of our biggest resources is our academy. And that doesn't mean that that player has to be like a savior to us. I'm actively watching Manchester City, Liverpool, Newcastle, teams like that use players from their academy, and it's not torpedoing their season. So it's not like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it won't kill us to see if Rule Walters can play a fucking game, to play one game. Because if he can play a couple of games until Tomiyasu gets fit and Ben White gets fit, you know, and whatever else happens, then we can attribute some of these funds forward, because you guys, we're not scoring goals. We're not scoring goals, you know? So it's a little bit stinky right now. It's stinky, you know? I'm not saying that we have to have a bunch of academy kids in there, but it never made sense that we couldn't have, like, when he was troubleshooting Declan Rice as a center back, he should have been troubleshooting Rule Walters at right back. He should have been troubleshooting Lino Sousa at left back. He should have been trying to figure out other solutions, because this was always in the post. I was like, damn, if Ben White gets injured, we're fucked. And guess what? Ben White's injured and we're fucked. He's playing with, like, he can barely walk. Like, he can barely walk. I want to talk about that stuff a little bit later, but sell Reece Nelson. Sell Reece Nelson. Like, it's not like, you know, I know it's harder to do than I'm saying, but the fact that it feels like we don't want to feels very weird, you know? Leopold says, come on, guys. It's obvious we need a new player. We do need a new player. Hugo says Jimenez and Estupinian and a number 8. That's like a summer window, and we're not going to get anywhere near Estupinian. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I love that player so much. I think he's one of the best left backs in the league. But we won't get anywhere near him, because you know who's probably going to end up getting him is Manchester City. Let's be serious. But I would take a Estupinian in a fucking second, but Brighton aren't going to sell him to us for anything less than he's going to be an expensive signing for Manchester City. That's for sure. Let's see. Aha says, hey, Jess, what's the minimum you'd sell Nelson for in Nketiah? I'd sell Reece Nelson for 15 million. I'd sell Nketiah for 30. 45 million in the bank just right then. You know, I don't think that they're amazing players. You know, I don't think that I wouldn't be expecting 50 million for Nketiah. I don't think he's that good, but 30 million, yeah, I'd take that shit in a heartbeat. And I'd take 15 million for Reece Nelson and walk away. You know, like, it's time. It's time. Aman says, I want a fullback, not another center back, to know why we can't just get Kyle Walker Peters. I don't know. It just feels like we're kind of like a little bit like, when you're like, you're almost like paralyzed from your decision making, and you're just paralyzed for making another decision. I feel like Arsenal are a little bit paralyzed here. They made big bold decisions that haven't really paid dividends, and those big bold decisions are now costing us the ability to go out into the January window and rectify them. And so, yeah, like, I don't know why we're not linked to legitimate like transfers at this moment, because there are other people that are, other teams that are already making signings. They're already almost done with their signings, but we can't move because we're unwilling to sell. And that's a nonsense to me. It's nonsense. Sell. Like, I know that sounds bad, but like, let's get rid. Like, come on. It's time. Like, and if they don't move players on and bring somebody in, I'm not taking any sort of title talk serious. And to be honest, Arsenal doesn't talk about winning the title very often. When we're in the media, we usually talk about getting better and improving and competing, but we really don't talk about winning, you know. But I will definitely not take any title conversation seriously, because we're watching Liverpool and Man City are going to go to another level in the second half. Liverpool started off slow, and they did the thing that we thought we were doing. They started off a little bit slow and they got better, and now they're hitting their true form now with players. Like, they have injuries, they have players out, but it's not really stopping them. Their summer signings have, given them the foundation that they need, blah, blah, blah. They had some players that were coming back from injury. Now Jota's come back from injury. It's nice having an attacking player coming back from injury, right? It's nice. We don't have any attacking players coming back from injury. We only have fucking defenders. Like, must be nice. They have players coming back. They have Thiago Alcantara that's going to come back for the second half of the season. Liverpool will buy in January, by the way. So they're doing the things that I think we felt like we were going to do. But our season feels like it's collapsing a bit, and theirs feels like it's going up in a crescendo, right? And so, I don't know. I don't know what Arsenal are going to do, but they can't be stuck in the mud. They can't be so willing to make big decisions when we don't really need to make those, and then turn around, and when the big decisions need to be made, stand around like they're paralyzed from the decisions. They need to shit or get off the pot. Make a decision. And Nketiah and Reece are not doing anything for us. They're really not. Tawanda says Arteta is not managing the team. We signed better players. He needs to deliver ASAP. And I've said this before, that I don't actually think our players are as bad as people are making them out to seem. I'll be really honest with you. I think our team is a lot better than what they're showing right now. I think we're getting, a lot of times when I watch our team play, I feel like we're getting maybe like 70%, 80% of what we could truly get out of them. But they're all kind of like afraid. They're a little bit stiff. They're a little bit, rigid, whatever. And we're just not getting enough out of them. And I think that's a coaching problem rather than a quality issue. Like, even if you don't think Reece Nelson is that good, we have not gotten enough out of him. We haven't used him enough, so that's up to the manager. It's up to the manager. El Neni is also maybe going to leave in January. Maybe also Cedric. These players, it's like they should have been gone a long time ago, but they're still here and whatever. But Arsenal midfielder Mohamed El Neni is on the verge of exit from the club after a number of Turkish sides made offers for the Egyptian international. I think he only had like him and Cedric's deals end in the summer anyway. So whatever we're going to get for the two of them is going to be nominal fees, but I would love to see the back of both of them. Like, I think El Neni's a good player, or like a good guy. Like, I think he's a good guy. I don't think Cedric is an asshole or anything like that, but really and truly, like, we don't need these players in our team. Like, Reece Nelson and ESR are not getting playing time. These guys definitely don't need to be in the team. And, I would rather these spots be taken up by Miles Lewis-Skelly or Nweri or Rule Walters, rather than two guys that really are just not, they never have been good enough. When you're in the prime of your career and you're being loaned out, you're not good, so, and both of them were loaned out in the prime of their career. They're not good enough. Both of them need to go, but we'll only get nominal fees for the two of them, because we don't sell when it matters, John says, good riddance. Let's see. Jacob says, Jess, is it a coaching issue when Saka and others miss shots from a front of the goal? West Ham was not Arteta's fault, and I said that. But we're talking about what happened. We're talking about the fullness of the season. So you can take out like little things like, okay, the Aston Villa game we didn't do this, the whatever game we didn't do that. I hear you, but I don't think we've seen this team. I don't think you can say at any point this season you felt like you saw this team playing at 100% or you saw us play anywhere near the level that we feel like we can be at, right? So that's a macro conversation that you're pulling out like, okay, well, they didn't put their chance away, but blah, blah, blah. Why are they not putting their chances away? Is it because Saka has half an Achilles and Martinelli's painfully out of form and needs to be dropped? You know, some of these decisions are on Mikel Arteta still. So yeah, I think that it's like, oh yeah, they're missing sitters, but there's also reasons why you could be missing these chances that also go back to the manager. And this team, this squad as a whole is not performing to a title winning level. And that's beyond these small conversations that we have post match about Saka missing a sitter or Gabriel Jesus missing a sitter. You know, why is it that we can only rely upon Gabriel Jesus as a striker for us? Why are striker options only Gabriel Jesus and Nketiah? Why don't we have a clinical forward in our team? Why isn't Saka able to play a match and not look like he's about to fall apart? Why is Martinelli just playing games over and over again in the same way and not being rotated out or played in a different way? Those are the conversations that we're having around the manager. So yeah, the players need to put their chances away, but that doesn't have anything to do with why Arsenal have not looked like they're playing at their highest level the entire season. Those are two different conversations. Two different conversations, you know? The Arsenal perspective says, in the fullness of the season thus far, we have not seen the fullness of potential in the squad. Forget title winning pedigree. We are not performing at the levels capable. And that to me, like, again, is a much different conversation than missing sitters, you know, because you're going to have games like West Ham. You are going to have games like West Ham. But what our contemporaries don't have, they have games like West Ham. What our contemporaries don't have is games like Fulham, where you had a game like West Ham and you don't respond and you're yelling at each other, you play like shit, you're not really running around, you're not really doing your job. Like our contemporaries don't have games like that, but they have games like West Ham where they miss open chances, you know? And so I've never seen a team fighting for a title have a game like Fulham. Never. That was a huge red flag. I've never seen Manchester City or Liverpool have a game like that. They've had games where they haven't won, but they haven't had games where they look like they couldn't pass the ball to each other. And by the way, we've had a couple of those this season where we just don't even look like we could be asked to be a part of this game. And that's unacceptable. And for me, that's more about the environment. Is it a title winning environment or not? You know? Let's see. That's all I'm saying, y'all. Let's talk about Tomiyasu, because I have things to say about this shit. I love Tomiyasu. And prior to his most recent injury, I was very happy to see him get this new contract. I was, because I feel like, you know, obviously you want to protect the value and all this kind of stuff. And he was playing out of his skin. He looked like a world-class player. But he got another injury and now he's off to the Asia Cup. And we don't have a defender. So he's getting a new deal. He's getting more money. And in the 4 years, this is his fourth year. This is third year. Yeah, this is his third year. He's maybe played 40% of the games that he could have played, if I'm being generous. And I don't think we should have pulled it per se, but I don't feel as good about this as I did before. I'm feeling like if we got to the summer, he would be like, when we get to the summer, he'll be a lot further down my list of players, like in terms of importance of the team, because you cannot be important to the team if you're not available. Like that is a bare minimum requirement to be important to a team. Nobody has important players in their team, like key members of their squad cannot be injury prone. They cannot always be out. They have to play at least 80% of the season, you know? And Tomiyasu doesn't do that. Thomas Partey doesn't do that. You know, Jesus hasn't really done that either. If he were to get another injury, he would also be in that category for me of players that you cannot rely upon. As important as they look and as good as they are, they cannot be that important to you because they just don't play enough games, right? And so I'm feeling some type of way about this because I'm just like, so basically we're going to have Zinchenko, who's injury prone, who's out now and needs scans. So he'll probably be out for a while. You have Tomiyasu that's out or going to go to the Asia Cup, but we know another injury is usually around the corner. You have Timber that's out. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know? I feel a way about it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel some type of way. Like we're doing the same thing that we always do, rewarding players that we probably should be looking at as short term. Like, okay, now that you haven't been able to on your third season be reliable for us, we're going into the direction of less important to the team, maybe looking for a way to move you on in the future. Maybe not just like now, right now, but like in the future, rather than solidifying you longer. Because the higher wages you give Tomiyasu, the more difficult it's going to be to move him on, right? And so in a time where a couple of weeks ago where he was playing out of his skin, I was thinking, hell no, you don't sell him to Bayern. Maybe in the summer I would like if a bid came in for him, I may consider it. Because it's not because I don't like Tomiyasu. I love Tommy. Like I do. I love him. I think he's fantastic. But I keep the same energy that I would for anybody else that's injury prone. I just don't think these players you should be. I hate that they get put on pedestals when they don't play the games. It's like our team is going out there and playing against, going to Anfield and shit, going to Etihad getting slapped. And those players are getting killed. But the players that we always hold in high regard are the players that are never there. And I don't think that that's right. I think Tomiyasu is somebody who's falling further away from my unsellable list and is going closer to well, is there a way that we can maybe move him on and reinvest into somebody that's more available? Because it just doesn't make sense, to continuously keep these players around when we know that their injuries are going to always torpedo our seasons. It never fails. It never fails. Having Thomas Partey and Tomiyasu in this period probably would have stopped us from giving away so many points. You could say that maybe. But every single season we're talking about Tomiyasu and Thomas Partey not being available, and that's the reason why we don't win. And so I'm feeling some type of way about it. I love Tommy to death. I do. And the deal was probably already down on the pipeline, right? But it wasn't like we didn't already know that Tomiyasu was probably somebody that wasn't going to be available, you know? Um, I don't know. I don't know. And then when we say things like we're trying to maintain their value, that doesn't ever really make sense to me because anytime we've given somebody a new deal to maintain their value, we never sell them for their what they're worth anyway. We always sell them for less. You know what I mean? That it never really makes sense, So I don't know what's going on with that, but it's not a good. I don't like to say that, you know. I don't like to say that, but I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Um, it's weird. Um, let's see. Let me take a little sip of my coffee before it gets fully cold. So yeah. Psycho says the only way Arsenal fans get a striker they think they deserve. Wait, the only way Arsenal fans get the striker they think they deserve, Arsenal would have been winning trophies or overpay. Arsenal right now ain't doing any of that. Boy says Reece Nelson was kept strictly as an accounting exercise. It was bad accounting to let him go on free after paying a decade's worth of wages. And I think that you were seeing with Reece Nelson that it wasn't about they love Reece Nelson and they saw him as an important part of the team. It was just more that they couldn't afford or they didn't want to let him leave for free. But if people are interested in him, you need to move him on. And Tomiyasu is also somebody that I'm looking at. I'm like, okay, we're maintaining the value. Probably they don't want to let him go, blah, blah, blah. But he needs to go a little bit lower down the pecking order in terms of importance. Like he's just not it. Like he can't stay fit. And if history tells you anything, is anytime we've had an injury prone player, they end up being injury prone the entire time. It never turns around. It never turns around. until they go to another team, and then all of a sudden they can maintain fitness for a little bit. Kenneth says Arteta needs to change the starting lineup overall. Temi says big questions need to be asked about our training pitch and tactics. Most of these players were prone to injuries before they came to Arsenal, or they weren't. You said that. I think you mean that they weren't. Chadwin says, I don't think there's any need to panic. What if we regain form from now to the end of the season? Do you think we stand a chance? The thing is, though, Chadwin, is that like we've been saying since the beginning of the season, once we hit full gear, we'll be this and that, right? But we haven't hit full gear. And when you have players that are painfully out of form and have been for the entire season, like we haven't had any attacking players in form. Saka is the closest we've gotten to an attacking player in form. Like it's December now. You should be hitting that form. And some of that is because players are playing with injuries. Some of it is just because players are just playing shit right now. You know, some of these, I don't know. You know, I don't know. You know, so if we had, you know, hit this little blip, but prior to the blip, we had seen the best from Arsenal, then I could think that we would get to it, right? But this season, we have not seen what I think a lot of us would envision is like the best Arsenal. So it feels a little bit more like this is who we are rather than there's this other level that we're going to get to. You can't be crashing and burning in January the way that we are. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Mr. Happy says Arteta needs to get over his Eddie man crush. I'll be pissed off if we reject a bid of 25 million or more. We've been batting away interest for Eddie Nketiah for a couple of years now. We do not seem to want to move on from him, and it's really, really, really like annoying because he's not good enough. He's very average, and I'll be honest, like if you continuously watch somebody that's nowhere near your level play over you on a consistent basis, you start to not give a fuck as much. I know that from personal experience. Again, I haven't played at the highest level, but I can understand the dynamics of watching somebody who is like painfully under your level consistently be chosen over you and given multiple chances despite their form. Yeah. And you're just sitting there like, what the fuck? Like, why am I here? And so I think it's more difficult to, you know, get better players motivated when they know Eddie is always going to play above them and he's not even a starter. So it's a nonsense, you know. Let's talk about a defender maybe coming in. That's been the biggest rumor out there so far for Arsenal, is that the feeling amongst many Arsenal people is that the arrival of a new versatile defender should be prioritized in January. So I'd imagine they're trying to buy another center back to Jimmy Rigg and to left back. And so far, the only player that has seamlessly moved from center back to a fullback position for Arsenal has been Ben White. The others have struggled. Tomiyasu, for me, has struggled until like this most recent patch of form. But I have a suspicion, I think some of you guys have said this in the chat before, that Tomiyasu's recurring injuries are probably because he's not meant to bomb up and down the sideline. He might just be a center back and needs to stay in that position so that he's not like overexerting muscles that, you know what I mean? Like if you're not a player that your body can't withstand that up and back, and you're just a center back, then being asked to do it on a regular basis is probably going to re-aggravate injuries that you don't want re-aggravated, right? And so you have Tomiyasu and then you have Kivior. And I am so mad about what's going on with Kivior. I cannot even describe it because I've seen this all before. Every time we bring in a player that is not in the starting 11, you know, and they're younger and need to adapt, it's only a couple of months later where we're saying that they're shit and they were a waste of money. And I always want to ask these questions. Are they in an environment, or are they playing in an environment that is going to give them the best chance of survival? And I think in most cases you can say no, because in order to give a player like Kivior a chance of survival, you need to play them consistently for a run of games, and they need to be playing in a position that suits them, period. You know, and I think most of the time when we look at these players, you can look at those two questions and say neither of those are being done. Neither of those are being done, period. They're just not. You know, Kivior does not get runs of games. He gets bits and pieces here and there. And then when he's being called upon, he doesn't have the confidence to do it because he's also being played at left back. And I'm sorry, if you're watching somebody like Gvardiol, a world-class center back being played by Pep at left back, and he looks fucking weird doing it, then Kivior is also going to suffer doing it, you know? And I just don't understand why at this stage, Mikel Arteta can't just say, you know what? If I want to use Kivior and I want him to be useful for me, let me play him at left center back because I'm fucking destroying him. I don't think Kivior is a horrible player. Just like I don't think Vieira is a terrible player. Vieira is a number 10 that's actively being asked to play in a number 8 role and asked to do things that are out of his skill set, and he doesn't get runs of games. So what happens? He doesn't play well. Did you guys listen to what Alanga said in his post-match podcast or post-match interview after they beat Manchester United? He said that the reason why he didn't play well at Manchester United is because he would get 15 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes there. And that wasn't for like a young player like him that was like, coming through or whatever. That wasn't enough for him to like really get going. Right. And like now that he's playing more like consistent minutes, he's able to show his quality. And Alanga's not like the best player in the world, right? He's not. But that sticks out in my mind because I'm like, and when did Sambi, Kivior and Fabio Vieira, when have any of them gotten a decent run of games in a position that suits them? Sambi was always a midfielder that needed to play in a double pivot, but Arteta continuously played him in a single pivot. And that position for Arsenal was the most difficult. At that point, even Thomas Partey was struggling to play that position. It was before the season that he really it was before last season where he really had it nailed down, right? He was playing Sambi in a single pivot and expecting him to thrive. And as much as I don't rate Sambi's qualities because he's not the midfielder that I would want, I don't like midfielders that are slow on the ball. And, I don't like Sambi is not my ideal profile of a midfielder. So I'm never going to love him, right? But can I look at the circumstances with Sambi and say, was he played in a position that suited him? No. And was he given a run of games so that he can gain confidence? No. And then was he used in situations where he was not ever going to thrive? Absolutely. And so that's happened with Sambi, Kivior, and Fabio Vieira. Sambi cost us 18 million. Kivior cost us 25 million. And Fabio Vieira cost us like 35 million. That is a lot of money to waste because Mikel Arteta doesn't know how to integrate players outside of the starting 11. And what we do is we give him a way out. Every single time we have a player that doesn't immediately work out, we say, he's not good enough, he's shit. 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 When are we going to start asking questions about whether or not these players were integrated properly? Has anybody been integrated properly that's in that position? Outside of the starting 11, maybe from another league that's young and needs a little bit of development, those players don't thrive under Mikel Arteta. Shit, Trossard is barely surviving. Trossard is barely surviving, and we know Trossard is a good player. As much as people are trying to gaslight people into thinking Trossard is just not any good, have a seat. Please, have a seat. Trossard is not a bad player. He may not be world class, but that does not mean that what we're seeing right now makes any fucking sense. Anybody outside of the starting 11 is destroyed and demoralized by the way that they are in the squad. They never come off of the bench and look like they're ready to change the game. Ever. And maybe that's because the only player that gets runs of fucking games and plays in a situation that suits him is Eddie Nketiah. He's the only one off the bench that gets any sort of like love and affection and arm around the shoulder and time. Can play day in and day out and play shit and still get game time. But not Fabio, not Kivior, not Sambi. No. They don't. Even Tierney to a certain extent. As much as I feel like Tierney needed to be moved on, especially because of his injuries, I think all of us can say that Tierney was not played in a way that suited his style. And so it made him look worse than he actually is. Tierney is not a terrible player. Have we moved beyond Tierney and his injuries? Absolutely. But I see the same things over and over again. Tierney was useless for us as a squad player. Useless. But he could play for Scotland. Make that make sense to me, y'all. Make that make sense to me. So back to the Kivior thing. For me, it's just like we have a defensive issue and we need to bring in a defender. And maybe that Jarell Hato is the player. But we're wasting so many resources as it is. And if you could just get a tune out of Kivior and play him properly, put an arm around him, shit, treat him like Eddie, maybe you get more out of him. I don't know. The resources are not being used properly. But I can't ignore a pattern and pretend it's just the players all the time. It cannot always just be the players. Yeah, when they miss sitters, it's on them. It is. It's on them. Like, they have to put the ball in the back of the net. But have you ever felt like under Mikel Arteta that the squad people, the people coming off of the bench, have ever been useful to us? Have ever been able to come off of the bench and make a difference? No matter who it is, no matter if it's fucking Cedric and El Neni, or if it's freaking Emil Smith Rowe and Kivior and Fabio Vieira. No matter it, the thing changes, but we have the same result, and we're spending money on these players. And I just feel like these players are being like it's mismanaged to me. It's shit. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. The reason why I can't do it is because I just feel like we're letting Mikel Arteta off the hook, and we're going to give him more players, and they're still not going to work out. And it's just going to be that player's just not good enough. Even if they end up not being good enough for Arsenal, you can still get more out of what you're getting out of them right now. And you can start by playing them in positions that suit their fucking skill set. You can start there. You can start there. That's a bare minimum requirement. When you get a player, play them in the position that suits them, and then give them a run of games so that they can build some confidence. Otherwise, it's just a loss. You're not going to be able to do it, you know? So yeah, let's see what you guys are saying. Tawanda says, use the academy and the fringe players. They need games. Hell, bring some of the lone players back. Aman says, Arteta is a one-dimensional manager, Jess. He wants everything in perfect conditions. When a player gets injured, he will not change the system and instead play players in positions that don't suit them. And then when we look at them, then we say, oh, well, they're just shit. How can you look at some of these players and say, yeah, well, they were good before they got here, but then all of a sudden when they got to Arsenal, they were just, we just got it wrong again. Like, you can't get so many. It's every single one of these players cannot just be bad. They can't. They're not being played in positions that suit them. And a lot of players play out of position for Arsenal. A lot of players play out of position. Some survive, but most don't. Most players need to be put in conditions that suit them to survive. When Kivior played center back for us, he was fine. But the more he plays left back, the more obvious it is that he isn't, right? But Arteta continuously plays him there. And instead of Arsenal fans using their thinking cap and saying, why does this make sense, and ask questions, they just go, Kivior shit, get rid of him. What's the next player going to do? Because Arteta is going to buy another center back to play left back. He's not going to buy a traditional left back. He's not going to buy, a normal ass left back. He's going to, a versatile defender means somebody that plays center back and left back. That means we're going to bring in another player that's probably primarily a center back and ask them to play left back. So we could potentially get another Kivior situation here. And I don't want to see another one because I feel like Kivior has been fucked over, period. I do. I don't think Kivior is as bad as he's being made, but he is bereft of any level of confidence. Any. Sorry. The Arsenal perspective says if they were good before we got them and then they come to us and they are shit, then what are we? Are we shit creators as a club? And the thing is, we've said this many times about Chelsea, right? Why is it that they bring in good players and then these good players end up being shit where they are, end up being shit at Chelsea, but then they can leave and look good again? Why is that? It's because when they get to Chelsea there's years for Chelsea that these players were played out of position, including Kai Havertz. They knew he wasn't a number 9, but they continuously played him there. If you continue, like Poch is doing it right now with Levi Colwill trying to play him left back, he's getting cooked. When you see that happen with really talented players like Gavardiol and Colwill, two players that, by the way, people think are better than William Saliba, would you put William Saliba at left back? See what I'm saying? And continuously play him there if it wasn't working? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Put Kivior at left center back. Please stop fucking him over because he's useless to us now because he's played too many games where he's been cooked too many times. You can't expose players so many times and then expect them to play well. We've seen Arteta likes to play players out of position. He likes to have positions in the team that have so many dimensions to them that they're hard to work out. They're not simplified. And then you have players playing in those positions that don't suit those qualities. Like when Ben White said that a fullback for Arsenal needs to be a number 10, a winger, a DM, and a center back and a right back, I was like, that doesn't sound good to me. Because you got to do too many damn things. So, you got to do too many things. So that's just where I am. That's just where I am. That's where I am with it. I want him to simplify things just a little bit. There's almost 300 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to get into some other things, but I need things to be more simplified, especially for players that don't have confidence. When you have players that don't have confidence, please make it simple for them, because we have so many players that are meant to do so many things, and Kivior can't be one of them. Asking him to play the Zinchenko role was just the way to put him in the coffin. You might as well put him in the dirt now, because he was exposed in a way that I feel like is not right for a player to be exposed. Because if you ask me what Kivior's best qualities were, what it would be fucking defending. So I want him to just fucking defend. I don't want to see him. When I saw him inverting, I was cringe, because I knew he was done. Like I was just like, you can't do it. Toney couldn't do it. Kivior can't do it. Tommy can barely fucking do it. The only player in our team that can do it is Zinchenko. So if you don't have Zinchenko, don't ask them to do it. You're killing us. You're killing us. Come on, stop. I that's no. I can't do it. I can't do it. I cannot do it. So maybe Arsenal bring a defender in, and that Jarell Hato is the one that's been linked most consistently, as well as Inacio, Gonzalo Inacio from Sporting. And I don't think we'll be getting Diamande. So, and if we don't get him now, we're not getting him in the summer. It's done. Like, listen, you guys know I've been when he goes to like Newcastle or something like that, it'll kill me. But Arsenal, they don't have the wiggle room to bring in a player of that quality, because we've spent all the monies, so there's no monies, But I think that, like, if we were to bring in a defender and it was that Gonzalo Inacio or Jarell Hato, both of whom, like, if you look at Hato's FB ref, one of the players that he's most similar to is Inacio. So we know what they're looking for: a center back that can play left back. Will they be able to get these players in January? I don't know. Like, aren't Ajax in like big trouble or something? Like, are they going to get rid of one of their better players? I don't know. Inacio, I did read something about like a loan with an obligation to buy. So maybe that's something that Arsenal can do for him. But they need to bring in a defender. Like they're going to need to bring in a defender, because we have not figured out a way to use the academy or anything like that. So they're going to need to bring one in, because we just don't have the numbers, and we're relying upon really injury prone players to come back and save us, and they're not going to save us. So hopefully they do it. Let's see if anything else has come out in the last couple of minutes. I feel like nothing has, and we'll get down to like the last fucking day of the window and then try to do something, and then no. I'm just looking. All these stats about Declan Rice passing forward is so funny. We're going to talk about that as well in the afternoon show. If you guys want to talk about more about the style of play, I see people going pass, 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 pass. We're going to talk about that in the afternoon show or the later show, because this one is mostly just about transfers. But I don't really want to get into that now. But we will talk about our playing style and the management of the squad and all that kind of stuff a little bit later. I'm just looking to make sure nothing has come out. I don't think it has. No, we're good. We're good so far. Okay, so maybe Jarell Hato, maybe Ignacio. I would be interested in either one. I just feel like they're not going to help us score goals, and that's a big problem that we have as well. Aha says, Jess, would you also sell Smith Rowe and Jan? If so, for how much? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would sell Emil Smith Rowe and Reece Nelson, because if you're not going to sell Ramsdale and Nketiah, then you need to sell Nelson and Smith Rowe. Nelson and Smith Rowe are good players that are not being utilized at all. And so we need to utilize them in the market then. If you don't feel confident enough to start Emil Smith Rowe or give him more than 10 minutes here and there, then what is he here for? I don't understand. I don't think I don't think any of the talk that Arteta was putting out there around Emil Smith Rowe for me makes me feel like he's a player that he likes, because the only time that if you love a player, you're gonna play him. That's just, if you rate a player, you're gonna play him. And right now, he rates Nketiah over all of these other guys, right? He's the only guy that gets any sort of playing time. And Trossard, too, gets in above Emil Smith Rowe and Nelson. Neither of them are getting playing time. Time to go. I think if you, like right now, you could probably only get like maybe 25, 30 for Emil Smith Rowe, but that's what you get when you don't play a player and up their value. We got Emil Smith Rowe's value up to probably like the 45, 50 million range, but it's gone now because you don't play him enough and he's injury prone, right? Get rid, sell. I would sell Emil Smith Rowe and Reece Nelson. Reece Nelson for like 15 million and Emil Smith Rowe for like 25, 30. That's it. You know, what what is Emil Smith Rowe going to do for us on the bench if he doesn't get any playing time? If you're willing to continuously play players like Odegaard and Saka through major injuries to the point where, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I get that Odegaard's an amazing player and so is Saka, and we need them, but there are definitely games that we could have used, utilize them, like put them on the bench and utilize other players, even like with 20 minutes to go, giving them more playing time so that these guys could take a rest. But they couldn't even rest against West Ham in the cup. Arteta still brought them in after we had lost the game. That's how, like, he could barely even rest them in the Carabao Cup. So move them on. It's time. Wahid said something Wenger used to do: buy a player he doesn't need, trying to win the league with a bunch of kids. Something Wenger used to do: buy a player he doesn't need, trying to win the league with a bunch of kids. Let's see. Jeffrey says leave Declan Rice in this chat. He has been superb. To be honest, like I opened my app yesterday because I was like enjoying myself yesterday because I mean it's New Year's, right? So I opened the app for the first time at like maybe 7 p.m. And saw Declan Rice being targeted as like the player that was holding us back, and I closed my app right away. I was like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, but it just goes down. It's like, well, it has to be somebody's fault, and sometimes I think we just need somebody to really go in on at a moment's notice. And it was Declan Rice, and after he had that poor game against West Ham, I knew he'd be a target because it's the same as like when Zinchenko got nutmegged against Trent. It's like there's specific moments where an Arsenal fan base will turn against you, and that was it. Social Join says, instead of direct invert, why don't we play like more athletic fullback that pushes up the line, Rice and Odi, like more aggressive, like overlapping, like, fullbacks. We just don't play that way. I don't know why Arteta doesn't change the tactics, Faya says, Jess, you're right. Again, he never plays Nelson, and Smith Rowe consistently plays Eddie. It's annoying. Our best players can't even rest. And we talked about this last season too. Like we talked about, like, one of the biggest things that we wanted to see from Mikel Arteta was the utilization of the squad so that our best players are not hanging by a thread halfway through the season or whatever. And we haven't done it. It's basically been the same thing. And there's just no way that it's like when we rotate in the cups, we go out of the cups, but we won't rotate in the league, and now we're losing our best players because they're injured. So there's no in between. We either rotate heavily and go out of cups and play terribly, or we just play our players to death. There's no in between. There's never let me just rotate 2 or 3 players out here, and still try to win a game. You won't play at your best because you rotated a couple players out, but we still should be able to maintain a certain level with 1, 2, 3 players rotated out, but we can't. And that's it's just no in between really with us. So yeah, but maybe a defender will come in. We'll see what the developments are on that front. I'm sure if Arsenal do anything, it'll be that, but it feels like we have to maybe sell. And if like, I remember during the summer window when they were like, oh, Arsenal are going to get like over 100 million back in sales. Like that was like the word on the street is Arsenal are going to get 100 million, and we didn't get anywhere near that. And I think that's a big reason why we haven't we haven't got the money now is because we never sold anybody in the summer. Not really, you know? So if that's anything to go by, we're going to struggle to sell now. We're definitely going to struggle to sell now. Because they just will not get rid of players. Now let's talk a little bit about Ivan Toney, which I feel like is kind of like beating a dead horse at this point because Arsenal are not like anticipating bringing in any like big signings, and Toney would be a big signing. And a lot of Arsenal fans, I think, are holding their breath for a striker, but we're unlikely to get a big signing over the line. Arsenal are unlikely to get a boost in the form of a new big signing in the January window. The club needs to stay within the Premier League profit and sustainability rules and would first have to sell players to raise cash, which we just spoke about. And also, the Toney price is very high for a player that doesn't even get close to being considered a £100 million striker. Arsenal are very, very interested, and he's towards, if not at the top of Arsenal's recruitment list for a striker, which is also very worrying to me because I feel like he should only be top of your list in January. But if he's top of your list in the summer, I just feel like you could get better players in the summer. But that's neither here nor there. Brentford won 80 million to 100 million in January, near impossible deal to do without outgoings. So that's kind of where we're at. So basically what we're looking for, you guys, is for some players to fucking go, and so until they go, I don't know what to tell you. Some of these guys that people are holding out hope that they'll become the players that we thought they were going to be, those are the players that we need to go. But Arsenal don't seem desperate to let them go, and that's weird. Wahid says, if we are unlikely to sign a striker, then we are unlikely to win anything. And I think it's less of like I think I'm more concerned of how we've gotten to the January window, unable to move or make any adjustments. Like, we should always be in a position in January to make something happen without sales. I don't think you've conducted business properly if you got into the January window and you cannot do anything. In the past, it's mostly been we just don't want to do anything, but this time is we cannot. We cannot make any signings because of the business that we did in the summer. And if you were going to spend 200 million, you knew that you needed to balance the books and you needed to sell. And I look back on, the bids that came in for Eddie Nketiah, from Crystal Palace and places like that, and how we batted those away for like 30 million. And it's like, for what? We could have balanced the books then. We could have played Trossard, center forward, or even Havertz center forward for the time that Jesus was out and been in the same place. Eddie has not been so good where it's like we couldn't have lived without him, So I think I go back to the summer and I just think some of the choices that we made just made no sense. And especially in regards to selling. We should have sold Emile Smith-Rowe. You should have sold Nketiah in the summer. You should have sold Reece Nelson in the summer. Like, you should have sold or got rid of him. You should have gotten rid of all those players in the summer because are we so arrogant that we thought that we would get to the January transfer window and need not to do anything? You have to always have that ability to move at least a little bit. I'm not saying you have to spend 100 million in January. I don't think so. But we can't spend a fucking dime, y'all, until we sell something. That is a very weak position to be in January, But again, the only player that we were desperate to sell in the summer was Balogun, not these other guys. Like, it's crazy, AJ says, simple question. Why not offer ESR, Eddie, and 40 million for Toney? I don't know. But, players plus cash don't usually work anyway. Like, I don't really see those come off very often anyway. So, whenever people are like, well, why don't we just offer all these players plus a little bit? I'm like, but how often do we see those deals get done? I think there's a reason for that. But why we don't let Nketiah go to Crystal Palace for 30 million and let Emile Smith-Rowe go to Newcastle for 30 million? That is what I don't understand. Just sell, Brett says, we're not getting anyone. Enjoy the top four fight, guys. That's our real level. You guys overrated the team. And last year, using media hype, it's your fault, not Arteta's. Okay, so the manager doesn't have any culpability in this. It's just the fans. Be serious. Like, I know that it's like, I kind of get what you're saying, but I feel like your energy is misguided here. Um, it's not the fans' fault for feeling like we should be in a title race. And quite frankly, if we just did a couple of things differently, we would be. So I don't really understand why we would just feel like, oh, well, the fans are wrong for thinking we were a title contending team. The fans expect us to fight for the title after last season. So there's nothing wrong with expecting that. I don't think this team, even if you think this team is overrated, you don't think we're as good as Manchester City, we're definitely not as bad as we are right now. And I think that's the main issue here, is that people are getting this whole thing confused about we're not the best team in the world. We may not be the best team in the world, and maybe like the signings that we made and are keeping us from being that. But the signings that we made are not keeping us from being just a little bit better than what we are right now. That's what I'm concerned about more than anything. So, and it being a little bit better than we are right now means we're still in a title race. So I don't know why, like, it would be the fans' fault. They didn't buy Kai Havertz. In fact, not a single Arsenal fan wanted Kai Havertz, did they? Not a single fan said that, like, we had to bring in Raya, right? So blaming the fans right now feels a little bit misguided and a little bit just more of like a gotcha moment, like a gotcha, I gotcha, like you guys are the ones. It's actually the club that made the decisions, and the fans were well within their right after last season to feel like we're fighting for a title. And for me, this team is not this bad. Like, it's not this bad. I think the manager needs to do better with the coaching, tweak things, not put players in positions that don't suit them, use the squad better, and be a little bit more flexible with his tactics. I think those things alone, even with the players that we have right now, gets us 5 or so more points. That's beyond the fans. It's like, what are the fans? Like, what's wrong with the fans, Second Joe says, it's starting to get stale with this manager. The club lack real ambitions. First, for hiring a complete rookie, and second, for gaslighting the fans without serious follow through with player sales and recruitment. So yeah, Kenneth is asking, when's the next stream? The next stream is at 9 p.m. UK time. Yeah, I'll be back and we'll talk a little bit more about, I do want to get into the Rice conversation because that's a lot of what's going on social media. Newsflash, Thomas Partey is not going to AFCON, which means he's not fit, which means he's probably had a setback, guys, which is what I was saying. So as much as we're probably upset with Rice for not passing the ball forward enough, really, you guys are just mad he didn't play well against West Ham. He is not the reason why we're not winning. And quite frankly, even if he was the reason why we didn't beat West Ham and we didn't beat Fulham, he's the main reason why we were able to stay where we are anyway. So maybe somebody else in this team wants to step up instead of making it all about Declan Rice. I don't really understand the energy, but Arsenal fans are probably like the worst. We eat our own, and the best players always get kicked to shit, but we never look at what's going on with the manager and everything else, the tactics and all that kind of stuff. So whatever, we'll talk about that stuff at 9 though, because I think that's going to be a really, really fun conversation. Rep 187 says, I don't know why we don't go for Douglas Luiz last summer. I don't know why we didn't just bring in, like, either bring in an attacker or bring in the midfielder that everybody kind of like wanted. As much as I think Havertz is doing a lot better now and stuff like that, and I'm fully behind the signing in terms of like, I want to make it work. That is the most curious signing that we made in the summer, because that was 70 million that could have been used on 2 players. You could have bought 2 for like 40 and brought in an attacker. Even if it wasn't a striker, you could have brought in a winger or something like that. And you probably could have brought in a midfielder and done a lot better than what we're doing right now. Because that was a lot of resources sunk into one player that one needed like 10 games to even get going, and still probably doesn't suit all the needs that we need in midfield when you're missing a couple of players. Like, if you have Havertz in your midfield, you have to have Zinchenko behind him, because Havertz is not going to play that build-up role at all. And so to have him in there without like a Jorginho or anything like that, for me, felt suicidal from the very beginning. And so when you have Havertz in the center circle trying to do Jorginho's job, you're fucked. You're fucked. So to me, that's the biggest thing that will always stick in my mind off of the summer is it's not selling obvious players to sell and then sinking 70 million into a lot of resources into a player that probably doesn't fully solve our midfield problem, but also doesn't solve our attack problem. And so instead of looking at that, not necessarily the player, like I think people focus too much on Havertz and like make it a personal thing about him. If I'm him, I'm jumping ship from Chelsea too and going to Arsenal. It's not on him, right? But now we're starting to look at Rice, where for me, Rice is the right signing. Rice is 99.99999% always going to be available for you. He helps win you games. He keeps you in games. He gets you back. He has the right mentality, but he needs the right pieces around him as well, so that we're not looking at him to be our main creator. If you feel like your DM needs to be your main creator and you're mad that he's recycling possession, then you've lost the plot. You know, you lost the plot as far as I'm concerned. So you don't buy a player like Declan Rice and expect him to play like Jorginho. You know, that's just, you know, it just doesn't work like that. Um, but yeah, I feel like the 250 of you guys in here need to like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out, and make sure that you guys set up your notifications, because if you guys want to talk more about, you know, Declan Rice and the usage of the squad and the title race and ambitions and all that kind of stuff, we'll talk about that. I just wanted to do like a general update on what needs to happen in the January transfer window, if anything will happen, and kind of get like an update on what Arsenal look like they might do. And right now it's not looking good, Brev. It's not looking good. But like I'm even seeing now that like West Ham want Reece Nelson, but Arsenal want 25 to 30 million for the player. Seek help. We're not going to get that amount. And also being like very arrogant about your prices sometimes will keep you from being able to get anything. Like sometimes you have to be a little bit like, nobody's going to buy Reece Nelson for 25 million. Like, let's be serious. But we'll talk about all that stuff later. But I really enjoyed this stream. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. I think we're going to really enjoy having these 2 streams a day, because it gives almost everybody an opportunity to be a part of a live show, you know? And so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Get into the comment section after and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling and all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.